Where do you see the future in terms of SaaS, Silicon Valley, or just the tech world?
Look, I mean, technology keeps getting better and better every single year, and you have to differentiate between financial markets and the underlying technology itself. Financial markets go up and down. We have the dot-com boom, dot-com crash, etc. We had a boom throughout 2013 with Twitter going public and so forth. Then they had some hard times where there was no IPOs of major technology companies. But every year technology gets better and better and better in terms of the underlying. So that will go on forever in terms of the actual underlying quality of the technology. But there's how technology gets financed and how you raise money and the dynamics around the venture capital. I mean, it's kind of interesting to watch because venture capital funds are getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
They have more and more money,
A bit more and more money. They're doing it for a bunch of reasons. First reason is, there's like this feedback loop that's happening with venture capital where the top 10 venture capitalists get all the deal flow because they're in the top 10.
Yes.
And they're in the top 10, so they get the best deals, so they get the best returns, therefore they're in the top 10.
That's right.
So it's like an information cascade.
Correct.
It's like being, Tim Ferriss, when he did his book, The 4-Hour Workweek, he spent his entire marketing budget in one weekend to get himself in the top 10 list.
And then the rest is
because
easy.
Once you're in the top 10 list for books, you stay in the top 10 list.
Yes.
Right? So that's kind of what's happening in venture capital. So all this money is kind of flowing into venture capital funds. So instead of being a $100 million fund now, they're a $1 billion fund. The problem is the software company can't take $100 million in investment. Like, what would you do with it, right? And unless you're in Silicon Valley and the wages are stupid.
Correct.
Even then, you couldn't really use the money, right? So companies are staying private longer and longer and longer. Also, the public markets for exiting technology companies have not been available for many years.
Right.
Occasionally they'll open for a little bit,
and
a few technologies have come out, but then a lot of crap comes out in the market and the market window closes again.
Makes sense.
So, the likely route for a venture capitalist to exit is through acquisition, through a trade sale to someone. And there has been a lot of funny financial engineering that's been going on in terms of the whole unicorn phenomenon. So there's this whole thing about, okay, you're a unicorn, you've got $1 billion valuation, therefore you're a superstar company, you're on the world stage, etc.
The whole world's watching.
But I've got a whole talk on YouTube called How to Not Get Screwed in Venture Financing, which kind of explains what's actually going on there. Let's say you're a company doing 20 million in revenue, right? And you're growing at 40% year on year, right? Well, if you take all public companies in technology and you plot them, where on one axis you plot enterprise value to sales, right, which is effectively their market capitalization minus the cash in bank divided by sales. So it's what multiple the market is giving them in the valuation over their sales, right? Yes. So if your revenue's 20 million a year, what's the multiple on 20 million you'll get in terms of valuation?
Correct.
And on the x-axis you plot what's your revenue growth year on year from 0%, 10%, 20%, 30%, 40%. If you draw a scatter plot, and these things change over time, but if you draw a scatter plot, say around now, if you're growing about 40% year on year, typically, if you're lucky, you can probably get a valuation of 10 times your sales.
Right.
So if you're doing 20 million in revenue year on year, and you're growing at 40%, right, per annum year on year, you should be able to get a $200 million valuation.
Yes.
So what was happening in the unicorn phenomenon is these VCs were coming along going, hang on a tick, what we'll do is this. We'll find these companies doing 20 million in revenue year on year that we think are good opportunities. They've got good growth. 40% year on year is really great growth. And we'll go to them and say, how would you like to be a unicorn? What I'll do is I'll give you $100 million investment at $1 billion valuation, right? And every startup founder would go, okay, great. I'd love to get $100 million at $1 billion valuation. I'll be a superstar, right? I'll be in the news. I'll be in the front cover of Wide.
That's something they deserve.
I'll be on Wide magazine. I'll be whatever, right? But and so, but 20 million in revenue, growing 40% year on year, $1 billion valuation doesn't really make a lot of sense. I mean, how many years would you have to operate before you actually pay back $1 billion, right?
Correct.
So what was happening was, through the magic of venture capital financing, they'll say, okay, here's a term sheet, 100 million invested, $1 billion valuation, but what I want is I want a 2 times participating preferred liquidation preference. And what this means is, liquidation preference, it's really a construct designed to limit the downside of a venture capitalist.
Correct.
So for example, let's say I go and invest $100 million in your company and your company blows up, but there's 50 million at the bank at the end, when we wind up and sell the assets. Right. Well, the venture capitalists will say, well, that 50 million should be my money because I gave you just put in the hard work and the sweat equity.
Right.
I put in the cash.
Yes.
So there should be some downside protection. If the company goes broke. And there's 100 million or less left in the bank, I should be able to get that back first.
Yes.
And if there's anything more than that, then you can share with me.
Okay.
Right? So it was really designed as a downside protection.
Right.
But
It's like an insurance policy almost.
Yeah, exactly. But this morphed into a double dipping by venture capitalists. So they could do things like say, well, I think if I give you 100 million, that if the company sells for anything less than 200 or goes bust for anything less than 200, then I should get everything. Because I've taken the big risk. I've given you the money, right? And in fact, in a participating preferred scenario, above 200, then we share. So let's take this example. You've got a $20 million company,
Yep.
20 million
Now I'm
in
growing,
revenue.
growing.
You're growing 40% year on year.
Yep.
I say to you, 100 million investment
Yep.
on $1 billion valuation.
Yep.
So 100 million investment on $1 billion valuation means I get 9%.
Yeah.
But if you sell for less than 200 million, I get everything.
Wow.
Now, from a VC's perspective, that's a smart move because I know a company, 20 million revenue, 40% year-on-year growth, I should be able to sell that for 200.
Yes.
So what the founder hasn't realized is when they've got the stars in their eyes.
There's no lose. Yeah.
From the founder's perspective, they've swapped the company for a call option.
Correct.
So
Correct.
So they no longer own the company anymore. They have an option where if it's worth more than 200, they make money, but below 200, they make zero, right? And the smart venture capitalist has gone, well, my downside's protected because I've got a company now. I know I can sell for 200 because that's what it's valued at.
Yeah.
It's got 100 million extra cash in bank, so it should be okay for a little while.
Yeah.
And if I can get it to grow and be huge, that's great because
that's
it's got a lot of money into it.
Yeah.
But in terms of the downside, my downside's pretty good because my downside is I know I can sell for 200 and I know there's 100 million cash in bank.
That's right. And also I think for entrepreneurs, the founder, when they get this surge of cash,
Yep.
it's very easy to get a little bit careless, right?
Oh, well, that's the thing, right?
Right?
So,
it's like, I've got 100 million cash, no problem. Yeah, let's expand. They just spend money without really thinking about it.
So I don't think the best operators of businesses are in Silicon Valley because there's too much cash that gets invested in these businesses.
Correct.
They get sloppy.
Correct.
And the other thing is, I mean, you hire people over in the Valley, they stay for 6 months and they want double or triple what you'd pay them anywhere else.
Yeah.
The very good operators are the ones that are in other parts around the world where the money is not so easy to come to, and they've got to learn how to run a business off the smell of an oily rag, right? They've got to learn how to be, every
resourceful,
dollar, like an owner. Like every dollar I spend, how do I make more than $1 back, right? So they've got to really fight it out tooth and nails. Like for example, in Australia, for many years, the investing climate was terrible for technology. The guys that come out the other side, who are great CEOs, they didn't raise much money, right? Like for example, Atlassian, which listed in the US just recently, that's a business now worth $30 billion. These guys didn't raise any money until they hit 600 million valuation. Then they took 60 million bucks, and that was a secondary sale mostly. So,
they're just running good business.
They just run a great business, and they think very careful about where they spend their money. When they spend it on marketing, they want to make sure every dollar makes more than $1 back, and how fast do I make that money back?
Correct.
And they're very careful not to waste money. In the Valley, you go raise $50 or $100 million, you see the money will get spent.
Spend money, like a new office, get more space.
Massage, ping pong table,
like
wave
all this
pool,
stuff, all stuff that doesn't
yeah.
create more value for the company.
That's right. And then if they don't get to the next milestone in terms of valuation, then they're basically dead.
And then also in terms of the venture capitalists, they now have a lot of say of how the founder needs to do things, or it affects I think it almost affects the entrepreneurial spirit.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, the easiest way to lose control in a business happens on the first round of investment from venture capitalists, typically,
right?
Where the VC comes along and says, "Okay, the board. This is the way it works. We have a board of 5. You pick 2 people. I pick 2 people, and then we'll have an independent chairman."
Yeah.
Now, what they say about independence is the great thing about independence is the more you pay them, the more independent they get. Right? The independent,
which they work for the VC anyway.
Yeah. I mean, the flip side is the golden rule.
Yeah.
He who has the gold rules.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So the independent chairman that comes along, they know that the VCs are where the money is coming from, etc. So all of a sudden, on day 1, it's a board of 3 versus 2.
You're done,
control's gone.
Right.
Forever.
Wow.